I'm going to show how to install the bead locks and take a tire off the bead if you're in a pinch. Now, I just went and found the right size socket for the Kawasaki. It's a 14. This is a used set I bought. I'm hoping I'm not getting in the strip because a couple of these, I'm actually spinning by hand. And I haven't touched these. I'm just putting some fresh Rockzillas on. But wow, impressive how many I can take loose by hand. Now that's the easy part. I do recommend pressure washing as much as you can just to help make everything a little bit easier. That side's the easy side as far as getting the pop. It is. The back side is always going to be a pain. See, that was. So that's what we're going to show some tricks here. There's a few different ways you can do this. Now, my honest recommendation, if you're on a trip and you can take this to a shop with a tire changer, that's the easiest way. I'm just showing some examples. If you're in a pinch, how to get this bead to pop. First method we're going to try, we'll put one tire wedge and we'll pull another tire back up on here. Kinda sat there for a second. It's kind of starting. The other thing you can do, and I might do in this case, is throw a bottle jack right here on the hitch. But again, if you was at an ATV park or something and you didn't bring bottle jacks with you, or somebody didn't have them, you know, this wouldn't be the DIY. Now, this would be the preferred method if you're trying to save the tire, but if you don't have bottle jacks and you're off somewhere like an ATV park and you got two big trucks and you're just trying to get a damaged tire off and you're gonna throw that tire away, the little truck trick can work.
And a little quick tidbit on safety again, if you're picking the back of the truck up, I would suggest the truck, if it's four-wheel drive, being in four-wheel drive and in park and chocking the front tires. The one thing you wouldn't want to do in this scenario is potentially lift the back of the truck and it take off free rolling. Of course, safety first.
And if you was doing this, say with a lighter pickup truck, this is a 3500 dually, it's got a decent amount of weight, but if you had some stuff you could throw in the bed, if you had an ATV or something you could load, every bit of weight you put in the bed is going to help you in the ability as far as pressing down on this big. And you could even leave the bed unloaded, get the jack as tight as you can, then go ahead and add the weight then too, depending on your scenario. Bazinga! This is another way we're going to try to, and I've done it before, but hook your truck up to the, preferably whoever's got the heavier truck. And then if you got a decent jack, this one I think is rated for 5,000 if I remember correctly. Yep, 5,000 pounds. That'll put a decent amount of force. Now I have had it where I've pushed down on this and I can't get it to start popping the bead. And then I take a secondary jack over here, or a bottle jack, one or the other, and put that on, but we'll try it. This one I ran around for a bit, so it got hot, so it could help it maintain some stickiness to the rim. I think I'm just gonna miss that. You want as close to the lip as you can. Yeah, that's about perfect. Had a little rub right there, but that's getting really close to the inner. Now we're getting some cranking leverage now.
And with this technique, you might get lucky on the first couple tries, but do expect it to potentially take a few more tries, especially if you don't incorporate a second jack.
All right, let's try to rotate here.
Now, the third way I'm going to mention how to potentially do this is going to give you some food for thought, but it is not my recommended way to pull or break a bead off a tire like this is with winches. Now, one way you can do this, again, the reason I don't like winches, especially when you start talking about steel cables, there's a lot of kinetic energy. If something slips or goes wrong, it's a very easy way for somebody to get hurt pretty quick. Now, one way you can put the tire and rim up against a tree, get 2 winches on the back side. One winch pulls the top section of the tire backwards, and then the second winch pulls the bottom section, and the tire is on the opposite side of the tree away from the winches. So as you're pulling in, you're pulling the top and the bottom, and it breaks the bead. The other way is if you take like some heavy duty ratchet straps or something and ratchet strap it to something like a tree, and then you hook the winch to the inner part of the rim itself and pull the rim out towards you. That could potentially pop the bead too, but again, both of those, you have a lot of tension, something slips, breaks. Make sure you're keeping safe distances and staying out of the path if something goes wrong. I don't recommend either of those two, but we have done it in the past in very tight situations.
There we go. Yeah, it's possible without 2 jacks. It would have been easier at some point if I had this jack down and went ahead and did it, but that's another way if you're in a makeshift bind to pop the bead on a bead lock. If you're off-roading and got a spare tire but not a spare rim, there you go. All right, another little tip I'm gonna give you before you start doing these. Now, depending on how you're compressing air, just take the valve stem out. You got little tools like that and a little T1. But if you have the ability to put air in it, when you put it back together, it's going to be faster to get the bead to seat than trying to do it with the valve stem in.
Which with these bigger sidewalls, I've even had luck doing the bucket trip I'm about to show in an 18-volt inflator without even pulling the valve stem and get the bead to seat.
All right, so for this last part, kind of getting into the easier section that you see more YouTube videos doing and stuff, but one thing to keep in mind is your rotation. So right here, we have a rotation. Some tires are universal. It don't matter which way it rotates. But the last thing you would do is mount a bead lock or a full set of bead locks and then figure out 1 or 2 tires isn't rotated to how you're liking. So on this one, you can kind of see how the lug pattern is. The tire rotates and comes over, turns this way in a forward motion. So if we're going to put the tire on here, and then again, just think about like you're mounting the tire. So if you put the tire on the back, that's that forward rotation. That's how we're wanting to orient this tire. So, all right, so here I'm going to show a little tire orientation trick if you're not good as far as thinking through the steps and stuff like that. And then sometimes it's easy enough. It's really, it's an easy mistake to make. Maybe you buy a set of tires and you don't realize they have a forward orientation or rotation to them. So if you look at that, that means the tire's best orientation when it's going forward is going to be like that. Some mud guys will flip tires for certain reasons, trying to get different use out of the same tread pattern, but just the average, if you're trying to do with the tire, the manufacturer recommends. So if you notice, this is a forward pattern, this is a forward pattern. This one I've already mounted. It's on a bead lock. So I guess somebody's playing with tannerite. So that means that that's going to be my driver's tire when I bolt it on. This is going to be my passenger tire when I bolt it in. So that means this wheel needs to be just like this if I'm going to bolt it on. I'm going to still, hey Dixie girl, I'm going to still use my RU Glide stuff on as far as putting it on, but that is now my orientation again. Tire, where's my rotation mark? Right here. Again, if I drop it on right now, that's my rotation. Come back out, that would be the outer part of my wheel, bolted on. That is my passenger side orientation. Opposite is going to be for my driver. And if you have doing 4, you can put your 2 front tires together just like that, orient them, and then jump back, and you're going to do the exact same process for 2 of the tires. 2 is going to be reverse orientation because 2 is going to be on the passenger side, 2 is going to be on the driver's side. Again, it's simple enough, but it's easy enough to throw all these together and realize 1 or 2 is backwards, and now all of a sudden not only are you starting from scratch, but you're having to break the bead back loose to then redo them, which is a lot more work. Guys, just, again, simple enough, but just pay attention to it. Being that's the case, I'm going to put some RU Glide. Now, water and some Dawn dish soap will work for this same application pretty well too. Now there's some arguments about maybe it being a little corrosive on metals or alloys or stuff like that. And I'll show you the stuff's not very expensive, but that's the stuff I'm using right here for tire mounting lubrication. I do a handful of projects, enough to keep some on hand. A lot of times when I get done with one, it might be enough time. I'll just take a funnel and pour it back in the bottle. Voila. All right. So now it's time for the old 5-gallon bucket. Now, again, so again, that rotation, tire bite is this way, we're rotating forward. So this would be, as you're looking at it, again, trying to stress this enough that you don't make a mistake. As you're rotating forward, this would be your 2 driver side tires. You'd want the opposite orientation for the passenger. Now, with most of these tires, and you see I got it, take a look at your bead, make sure everything goes down in there good. Double check that you got a valve stem, and if you've ordered new tires, sometimes they do not come with the valve stem. Probably always check tires manufacturer's recommendation, but most of the time this little yellow is the lightest point of the tire. Most of the time the heaviest point of a bead lock is going to be where that valve stem is. So I'm going to rotate that around here.
And unfortunately, I have bought some tires. I cannot find the manufacturer specs online for that. And I end up bubble balancing it to make sure after I've mounted it that it was correct. And if you did mount it and it has a horrible vibration, you can't find that spec, that might be the first thing I would flip and try.
And with the bucket, it's probably going to be hard to see. If you can tell, you're getting close to, and I'll show another trick here in a minute on that. But again, yellow lined up with the valve stem. Now I'm going to take, for sealing purposes, throw a little bit of this this stuff ain't very expensive. You can get it Amazon. I can include an affiliate link for that, but your local parts stores like AutoZone, Advanced, stuff like that, it's either gonna have this product or something similar that I'm sure probably works just fine. Now, before I did this, I did clean the tire. I cleaned the lips pretty good. I don't think the person that had these wheels before me used any anti-seize. The threads of the bolt actually had dirt caked into them, so I cleaned all that up. Again, clean bolt holes, clean bolts. As you put everything together, the last thing you would do is have some crud or something get, and then throw a torque spec off, or you strip or break something. All right, so this next spot, some people do this, some people don't. I am a fan of it. Some people, and I can understand this argument a little bit. Some people say for their area it's not needed, like if you live in Arizona, desert environment, super dry. That's a different environment than when I'm here, which I go to Arizona and desert and stuff like that too. But when you start talking about southeast United States, there's a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture, a lot of creek crossings and stuff like that. And again, when I pulled these out, I was pulling out dirt with the bolts themselves. I was actually worried maybe something was stripped as easily as they came out, but I don't think that's the case, which we'll find out when we torque them in. And a lot, well, I say a lot, again, I've done a handful of sets, but the aftermarket ones that I have done, most of them recommend anti-seize on the bolts, so that's what I'm sticking with. Now with the Kawasaki, if I find a note I might put it up there, but if I remember correctly, the factory torque for these is 40. Could be wrong, I'll, again, if I find it, but regardless as to what the factory torque spec is, if you're doing Kawasaki bead locks, I do not recommend going to Kawasaki torque. Torque spec on these, I don't know if it's a second or third use and the bolt itself is yielding a little bit or what's bolting into, but there seems to be a handful of issues with braking going back with the Kawasaki torque spec. Deserick, a lot of times when he's done these, have done 16 and got by with it, but I wouldn't recommend the full torque spec. It just seems like it's been so many breakages on either the ring or stripping issues and stuff with that I'm not going to take the chances of going into a high yield torque spec. I'm going to probably go closer to Deserick's. Most of my other ones, if I remember correctly, has been around 20 pounds, so I think that's what I'm going to do these for. Now the second part, if you do a bead lock, again, I'm not telling you necessarily, I'm just saying what I'm going to do with my torque spec, and personally wouldn't recommend Kawasaki's just because it seems like so many people are breaking them using Kawasaki spec. I'm going to do 20 today, but the thing to keep in mind is it's not just a torque spec today, it's actually once they get some use, once they get some time. So, and again, check if you're not using Kawasaki rims or whatever rims you're using, the manufacturer probably has a recommendation for a retorque sequence. You can go off their recommendation, that's fine. I do think it kind of also depends on your use. If I took this back to Windrock and was really flexing the sidewalls and getting in some crazy stuff, I'd probably put them through more of a cycle than somebody running a 31-inch stock carnivore around some green Hatfield McCoy trails. I probably shooken them up quite a bit more in 25-30 miles of riding than somebody else maybe has in 60 or 70. But my general rule of thumb is 25 miles or your first decent ride. I'm not saying you went around the house for 30 minutes, but good half a day to a day. Go ahead and check them at some point, and then maybe run them another 100 miles or another full day and check them again. I do it consistently until my rechecks, I'm no longer adding torque. So if I do my first, say 25 or first day, and I torque them in 1 or 2, I'm getting a little more movement out of them. And then I run it 100 miles, and my second one, I don't touch them. I'll go quite a while between checking them again. Now, if I run it 100 miles and I can add some turn to it to hit that same torque spec again, I'll run it another 100 miles and check it. But once I've had a torque spec, ran it a decent amount, and then rechecked it and didn't add a rotation to it, that's where I feel pretty comfortable running them the longer distances at that point. This stuff always makes a mess if you've ever dealt with it. And depending on your manufacturer rims, they may have a specific, a lot of them will have some type of order in what you're supposed to do as far as torquing these. They'll give you a sequence of this is bolt 1 to 18 or however many is here, and they'll tell you to go maybe hand tight to this torque to this torque. The biggest thing here, regardless as to the rim, you're going to want to go in a crisscross pattern, and a lot of times I might go crisscross here, but you're wanting to evenly, just like you're doing a lug or a wheel on a car, you're wanting to evenly torque this bead lock down. Funny story, one of the bead locks that I didn't install, guy at the dealership said he knew how to do them, let him do it. I brought it home, and the bead lock, luckily I looked at it, was flexed up, but he went in a perfect circle for that torque spec, and it flexed like that, and luckily it didn't break the ring, and I caught it and I undid them and correctly did them. But yeah, it was one of those like, what in the world type things. Now a lot of people will run them in with a, again, I'm not going crazy whatsoever. I've got it in the lowest sitting that this gun will do, but I'm just trying to save some time here. But if you don't have good, whoop, and that's just an example of me not having good finesse. Oh, nope, I was in 3. I lied. But as I was saying, if you don't have good finesse, this may not be one you want to do with any type of impact or anything. I didn't go too crazy on that one, but I did make a mistake as I was talking about finesse, which is kind of funny, but hey, we're all humans. Now, if you did want to speed this up a touch, but you're not good with finesse, if you have a drill with a torque sitting, you could dial it back to like a hand tight sitting and just spin them in with those. And that's a 3/8 drive, and I thought I had it on 1, but regardless, you do want to be careful with the big 1/2 inch. Like that one's got a decent amount of torque. If I'd have held it in 3rd, it would have easily broke or probably stripped one of these. But like if I pulled my big 1/2 out and I accidentally ugga-dugged it one time, yeah, it's going to be a broke bolt or a broke ring, one or the other, or stripped. Something's going to happen that's not going to be good. And as you're doing this, you can almost see like which ones are sticking up a little bit more. And at some points there's no problem, and if you want to do a circle, just do a light circle, like a quick, hey, is anything not even making contact, like this one right here. And if you have the patterns from the manufacturer and you mark a 1, that's where it's a little bit more easy to keep track of. But again, this is a crisscross, use common sense. Every now and again I'll go in a circle and make sure everything's got snug, because a lot of times you can see them sticking up a little bit more than the other, but sometimes it ain't visually obvious that you haven't touched one of these. Alright, so I'm going to dial back to, let's say, a 5. And if you're using that type, you always roll it up to it, lock it in. But the key is you are dispersing this. Now, most of them should be, I'm going to go around that same pattern. And the thing that you'll notice as you're tightening into a tire. Again, tire's a compound, so it's get a little squish to it. Don't freak out if you go to do the circle and you tighten a handful, because I might have tightened this one first, for instance, and by the time I pull it down, there's not as much tension back against that ring. Alright, so I'm going to jump up to lock it in. I'm going to jump up to about 14 and start that varied pattern again.
If it's an aftermarket rim, a lot of times they will give you a sequence of how to step the torque up. But again, just about any bead lock, hand tight, throw 5 foot-pounds, and then baby step your torque up to wherever you're trying to get that final torque yield, crisscrossing, and you will be fine with bead locks, even if you don't have the instructions or the exact pattern. Just as a general rule of thumb, that's what you need to do.
I think those might be right. I mean, this is 14, and I feel like just by hand, that this being a sticky soft compound tire, I think this is starting to get into a decent compression factor. So 16, probably, he's probably right, probably works just fine. We'll go just a touch more for all right, now we're going to go to 20. And you see from 14 to 20 how much more turns and compression that's getting there. But by hand, if I didn't have a torque wrench and know that this is 20, it would feel satisfactory to me as far as torque values go. If I was just doing it, and I wouldn't be scared to do this by hand. You get a little bit of feel for stuff as the more you do it, but this is one of those, if I didn't have a torque wrench and we was at an ATV park, I would do it, but as soon as I got home, I'd go back and torque them, because I'd probably underguesstimate to be on the safe side for something like this. And the other thing I will say is, if you're ever doing this and all of a sudden, and I hope I don't demonstrate this, but all of a sudden it just feels like it instantly got easier to turn, that's a good chance you might have started stripping that bolt and just stop where you're at and leave it be. If you have one bolt that's not 100% torque yield here, the ring is still going to hold itself in, but whatever tension you're holding at that point is better than finish stripping it, unless you're going to repair the threads or do something to get a better bolt in there. These being used, that was kind of where I was a little worried if somebody did go kind of crazy with the impact or something before I go to put some torque on these and all of a sudden they do strips. That's why some of these I am going a little slower. I'm going to start that around the circle. Yeah, I'm going to go back all the way around. Now, for some reason, I'm still making turns like on multiple of these. I'm going to keep doing this until everything's pretty much either hitting torque as soon as I touch it, or it barely moves and it hits torque. Alright, so for this part, I did put the valve stem back in, though if you have the ability to throw straight compressed air in there without the valve stem, that is the best way to seat a tire. That's not what I'm showing here. I'm showing if you're in a pinch and you're trying to seat a tire, and you don't have a valve stem tool, that sort of thing. Now, a little trick I did here, and I recommend, is take a ratchet strap and put some compression clicks. Now, this one don't work. I do have a bigger one. A lot of times on trips I do have bigger ratchet straps that's wider, and the actual ratchet is bigger, so I can put more of a compress. But by compressing this, you're trying to kick the tire out to where it hits that lip and seats. And the more buddies you have where you're doing this or hanging around, the easier it is. Didn't really, I think me doing this, let me not jinx. That felt good. Still not fully seated. And that wasn't the way to do a ratchet strap, but it's actually close enough that the bead is about to seat. So let's go ahead and finish this. You see I'm close, so this really shouldn't stick my finger in there, but I'm getting very close. There's not air coming out of this, so it's close enough. The rest of this air pressure is going to finish seating that bead. But again, that little ratchet strap trick, it was close enough. It didn't do the full whoop whoop with the higher, but it's going to do it here in a second. There goes the pop. But yep, ratchet strap. And again, the more buddies you have that's hanging out that can kind of push down, because the more contact you can make here, the more it's easy to get this bead to sit. Now again, ideal scenarios, pull the valve stem, throw some high bead in there. If you got a cheater tool, stuff like that, this is not the most efficient way to get a bead to sit on a tire. But if you have limited resources, don't have those tools available, and you're in a pinch, hey, this is how you do it. Now, of course, the PSI that I got up to get this bead to finally seat in properly is going to be higher than what I want to run. So again, check your PSI, lower it, chances are. But being this is a slow seat like that, I'm probably well over the PSI I want to run in this tire. Or maybe that's even recommended for said tire. All right, just out of curiosity, we're going to see. That wasn't quite as crazy as I thought. We're about 15 PSI. So we got it seated. But again, high air, pulling that valve stem, that's the quicker way, or a cheater. Now, I do like this one. It's a slime oil field gauge. These are the digital, or something that's set to be good at the lower PSI if you're running these. Some of you are just like, if you walk into a gas station, you buy just the average little pin top thing. A lot of those ain't too accurate. I've tried to set it, but when you start talking about single digit PSI, that's not that good. This, or some of the more fancier race gauges, like if you're going to run a drag radial, if you're serious about doing this type of stuff, a good accurate gauge to see what you're at and be consistent, I do think it's kind of important.